Okay.
Shall I kick off, Craig, or shall we wait for 7:30?
I'm okay. Looks like we're kind of core it here. We can go
Okay,
ahead and start.
great, thanks. So hopefully everyone can see this unashamedly AI generated slide and have worked out where all the pipes are going to, mostly into the floor for some reason. Um, and we've touched on some of the kind of limitations of using AI. We all know they hallucinate. You can't tell them not to hallucinate because they're just probabilistic models. To them, it's just as right as something which is correct. And in particular, they're not very good at calculations and they're not very good at physics. I've tried to use one to make an ice block and it got really confused. It insisted that the ice was going to sink, and I couldn't persuade it otherwise. So on the face of it, not great for recipe generation, but we'll come on to that and have a look. Um, from my own point of view, I'm not really an expert on large language models or AI, or indeed brewing, but I kind of think I know enough about brewing to be able to spot an obvious error from a large language model. If I was completely new and just followed its instructions, I don't think it would be any use at all. And of course, if you know exactly what you're doing, you don't need any support. So these are just a few applications that I've tested out of large language models in the field of brewing. We're being encouraged to use it at work with kind of mixed results. So I thought let's just apply it to beer and see what happens. And the kind of guiding principle that I've taken is large language models produce this fantastic looking output. The words are great, but does it actually make a difference? Does it produce a better result? Does it save time? And that's the only judge of whether it's any use. Um, you might spot as we go along that the formatting and design of this slide deck is heavily influenced by AI as well. So you might spot a few little AI ticks as you go along. So here are my four little experiments I'm going to talk about very quickly. Uh, Started off a couple of years ago when I was practicing for the online BJCP online exam. Then I had a little play with trying to create score sheets using voice mode. Beer labels, everyone's had a go at that, and have come up with some quite nice creative results. And then finally, the kind of main project, which is Jim, the home brewing LLM assistant. And let's see how that has worked out. Yeah, so the BJCP online exam practice is quite a tough one to revise for because you've got to get used to answering one question every 20 seconds for an hour. So you've got no time to think at all. You just have to kind of go for it. So I guess the best way to practice that is just to have something that will bombard you with questions the whole time and see what happens. Um, I initially did this when I was practicing for the exam with ChatGPT. I've gone off ChatGPT completely, so I recreated something in Gemini. And actually, it was quite impressive, I thought. So hopefully you can see the um, browser page there. Is that working?
Yeah.
Um, so I've just kind of said create a sample BJCP online beer exam, and I fed it the study guidelines and the BJCP categories. and I've just asked it to set me 10 questions. And it's created a nice little interactive test. And you can tell it to make it more difficult or easier. It's now, of course, going to crash. Come on, come on, come on, come on. And here we go. We've got which set of descriptors and vital statistics Munich Helles. Uh, no, no. That one. No, no, I got it wrong. So there we go. You get the idea. And I've kind of tweaked it to set multiple different parameters within the same question. So that's it's a bit cumbersome on a desktop, but it does give you a little interactive app that you can carry around on your mobile. And then when you've got a spare moment, you can just flick through questions. And it gets you into that routine of just answering the whole time. And you only need to get, what is it, 50% or 60 or whatever. So that was quite a nice sort of initial thing. By the way, a lot of well, quite often, probably about 1 in 10 of the questions, it hasn't got the right answer itself, but that's all part of the test, really. You should be able to spot that. So it worked for me, and I managed to do the whole lot in 35 minutes and just scraped a pass. So good. That was a good application of AI. So now, what about the score sheets? So the problem I have with score sheets is that I'm very slow at writing, and my handwriting is almost illegible. And so I end up just not putting enough on score sheets. I think I can sort of detect things, but it's just too much effort to fill it in. Um, and to be honest, I feel like I need a bit of practice at home. Um, of course, using an LLM in a judging session is a total no-no. I mean, you can't be sort of rabbiting on to your mobile. It's going to disturb your other judge and the rest of the room as well. So this is just a kind of practice mode. So let's see if I can demo this. First of all, I'm going to have to switch to the room mic. Now, is that working?
Yep.
Okay, good, good, good. Um, the other problem with Voice Assistant is that it doesn't work in the browser version of Gemini. You have to have the app. So I've got a tablet here, and I've just set it up to uh, with a simple prompt. Hi, I'm going to taste that cocoa coffee stout now. What should I be looking for in terms of aroma?
For that cocoa coffee stout, you're expecting a strong blend of rich roast, like coffee or dark chocolate, balanced with dark fruit notes like plums or raisins. There might be some subtle hop aroma, maybe earthy or spicy, and some smooth, warming alcohol. All those should meld together nicely rather than being one dimensional. What are you smelling first?
So there's a moderate level of alcohol. It's kind of raisiny, and there's a sort of malt bread aroma as well. There's some cocoa coming through. I can't really detect the coffee, and whatever hops are there are totally overwhelmed by the other aromas. So, can you summarize the notes? Ah, there we are. Something went wrong.
So this is the problem with voice mode as well. Its connectivity is pretty poor. But I have on occasions managed to get that to work. And occasionally for just giving feedback to people, I've used this to provide a set of notes. So it's kind of okay. Another problem is that because it has to respond quickly, it's not on the kind of thinking mode of Gemini at all. So the quality is not quite so good. Now here's our favorite use of AI. You see this absolutely everywhere. And isn't if you look at the photo on the bottom left, this was something that Gemini put in when I asked it to improve the layout of the slides. And this illustrates precisely the problem. We've got a beer called Derricked, and then we've got a Mascicango and a Bendist, and then we've got Warham Spa, and so on and so forth, and a Polat Experiata. So yeah, it can produce labels, and you can tell it that it's a graphic designer, but wrangling it to produce the right results is a bit of a challenge. To be honest, I don't think I've really cracked this at all. I mean, here's some examples that are Gemini generated, which I quite liked. Incidentally, the double vision double IPA, Gemini came up with the name as well. It was my entry for the Brewer Vision last year, and it came up with double vision Eurovision, but Brewer Vision double IPA. So I thought that was quite nice. Generally, it's not very good at beer names, but on this occasion, it worked. Getting a sort of clean image that isn't all full of AI embellishments is quite difficult. But for some reason, with the Plum Ruffian, it pretty much stayed on task, apart from this little crown on top of the plum, which makes no sense at all, and I found impossible to remove. I tried to turn it into a beret or something, but it was having none of it. Cross Christmas Ale, some very odd imagery going on there. Not particularly happy about the kind of burning cross, but maybe it's sort of just illuminated or something like that. And you've got a nice winter scene in the background. And then you've got this monk who's obviously a bit dubious about this beer that he's drinking. It's a bit stronger than he thinks. Yeah. So I mean, in the chat afterwards, I'd be really interested to hear how other people have got on with beer labels. It is a bit of a challenge. And the biggest challenge of all is the Bishop tap handle design. I got a bunch of these kind of was it pentagonal shaped handles where you can slot in a label. And getting the AI to fit your design or its design into that pentagon is just about impossible. The nearest I got was this Old Oak Common label. But what it couldn't get the hang of is it's supposed to have a little margin around the side because the handle has a frame, and I couldn't get it to do that at all. I created it a special template, nothing doing. So that's the best I could do with the Bishop tap handle design. And I promised you there was going to be some slightly creepy imagery, and here he is, Jim the home brewer. Slightly unerringly, Gemini seems to have a vague idea of what I look like, and I think this is a sort of mashup of me, a cyborg, and a kind of generic brewer, and it's even put a little Brewzilla there, although it doesn't look like that at all, but never mind. But actually, this was addressing a serious problem. I got to a stage at the end of last year where every brew I did went wrong. 4 brews in a row. It was either yeast lag and then kind of infection getting in, or oxidation was creeping in at some stage, and I was kind of really stumped. So I thought, well, I'll just create this thing and see see if it can help. And initially, all I did was just kind of said, "You're an expert all grain home brewer. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing, and you can help me." And I've kind of tweaked it ever since. Um, One useful point that Steve Smith and Serge have said is that you really need to give it some proper reference material to base its judgment on. So otherwise, it has no idea whether the stuff it scrapes off Reddit is more valid than the stuff that it gets from Palmer's How to Brew. So you have to kind of push it in the right direction. And one of the things I wanted it to do was instead of what I've been doing previously, which was to kind of base my recipes on some other recipe and just tweaking it a bit, was to try and understand how to build these recipes from scratch and what effect that would have on the end results. So here's a sort of summary of the instructions that it's got at the moment. It's actually an AI summarized version of the actual instructions. I think this bit, the direct feedback without flattery, it's interpreted as be bloody rude to the user. And the honest, concise, expert feedback, it also thinks just means be rude. But I've kind of learned to live with Jim on this point. So judge it by its results. Here's the first recipe it came up with, which was supposed to be a kind of reasonably complex but drinkable Christmas ale without a whole lot of spices and fruit like I did previously. And it's sort of chucked a lot of kitchen sink stuff here. It's got quite a lot of crystal and aromatic, and I detected that I had flaked torrefied oats, so those went in as well. Had a lot of fun with the invert sugar number 3. I think that was its idea, actually. I came up with version 1 of the recipe, and I said, well, how can I kind of give this a bit of an edge? And it says, oh, you could make your own invert sugar number 3. So we had a nice chat about that, and I showed it photographs of how far the sugar had got and what color it was, and it sort of said, yeah, that's about right. So we got a sort of Fuggles Branding Cross flavor kind of thing. And it was quite keen on the London ESB ale yeast as well. So I got some of that. And off we went. And actually, it kind of turned out all right. It didn't go wrong. It was useful having something to bounce ideas off right the way through the brewing process. So instead of kind of messaging people within the group, which is what I'd normally do, sometimes you just don't have the time to do that. You need a decision straight away. And it was useful having someone quite kind of critical. And some of the ideas it came up with were a bit odd, to be frank, but you just had to kind of try and spot those. So actually it tasted really nice, but I think what let it down was that I started sharing fermentation graphs with it. And it got terribly excited and said, yes, now is the time to rack your beer. And the gravity was still kind of trundling down a little bit. But said, no, that's fine, that's fine. That's just bubbles kind of coming out of fermentation or something like that. So I racked it too early. Entered into the competition. Judges thought the recipe was interesting, but they spotted that there was acetaldehyde and the fermentation was rushed. So I then took the score sheets and presented them back to Jim, the home brewing gem, and he said, well, obviously that would happen because you racked it too soon. And I was kind of like, well, that's exactly what you told me to do. So anyway, that was a kind of learning process. Subsequently, I think it's kind of helped me to avoid failures. It's come up with some quite nice beers, the reasonable smoked beer, and quite a nice New Zealand Pilsner, a sort of mid-30s mini boss, but didn't get a medal, that kind of thing. So it hasn't it hasn't kind of increased the kind of best beers that I can produce, but it's helped to kind of lift the average, perhaps. Um, and let's just see if we can get Jim out of his shell. And where is he? Here he is. So Jim should know what's in my ingredients inventory.
James,
Yeah.
because I always just ask it to do something, and I've never thought of giving it a personality or giving it pre-knowledge, and so how do you do that?
So let's just see what um so it's got quite a long list of instructions that maybe we can have a look at. Um so I've told it a bit about my equipment and my kind of default batch size and things like that, and behaviors and rules and average mash efficiency, and I got it to remind me to avoid various things and how to present and advise on cleanup and that kind of thing. So it's got my spreadsheet of brewing ingredients. It's got an earlier edition of How to Brew by Palmer, which is available free online. It's got the BJCP guidelines, and it's got the BJCP beer faults list,
And then it applies that each time you say pretend you're Jim and do this for me.
well, let's give it a test. Okay, give me a recipe for, I don't know, an imperial stout. It won't like this because it thinks my Brewzilla isn't big enough. Using my ingredients. You have to get it to think a bit about it because otherwise it says I can't see your ingredients. What Steve Smith has done is use the guided learning, and that's really useful, but it takes much longer. It kind of really takes you through the process and says, what sort of beer are you looking for? How are we going to calculate the weight of grain, that kind of thing. Here we go. Honest technical assessment and recipe for a 21-litre imperial stout. So here we go. It's going to push your malt pipe capacity to the absolute limit. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so let's try and annoy him now. How about I do a side mash in using or you might think it's a good idea. I don't know. But weirdly, I mean, AI is always supposed to kind of flatter you and give you the answer that, oh, okay, it likes that. That's how you beat the physical limitations. Right, okay. Split the grist. Yeah, diastatic power. And so on and so forth. It's quite keen on squeezing the bag and then combine it. So you sort of get the general idea. It's not something you would kind of follow blindly, but it's quite useful for kind of bouncing ideas off and hopefully reaching. But what I always do is once it's come up with a recipe it's happy with, I then put it into Brewfather or Brewer's Friend and get that to do the actual calculations. And what you generally find is that it's sort of right, but the recipe is maybe a little bit imbalanced. And then you have to kind of go and search and say, is this percentage of this particular malt suitable or not? And normally before finalizing it, I then take that recipe and then feed it to someone else like Claude, for example, and say, is this a good recipe or not? And it will kind of say, yeah, basically you're right, but I would leave out this, that, and the other.
Yeah. The item 4 on the screen there. Does anybody there agree with what it says? Because that's the thing, it's providing you with a certainty. It's saying the old myth, extracting harsh tannins from squeezing, is false. Now, I disagree with that.
Yeah, I've never been a fan of squeezing bags.
Yeah, I squeezed my last bag and all it produced was tannins.
Yeah. I mean, I think what it doesn't realize is that you can sparge brew in a bag, same as you can do anything else. So why not do that rather than
No, I did the sparging and then squeezed the last bits out, which is wrong. Just sparge and let it drip. But
yeah.
what I don't like about this AI is the old myth is false. There's a certainty about that.
Yes,
It doesn't allow for me to have a different opinion.
Right. So what if we say you're wrong about
Ask it for sources.
yes.
What is the source of the data?
What is the source of your
Squeezing the bag?
belief in squeezing? Well, I don't think Palmer has a view on squeezing bags. I'm not sure he's a big fan of.
I think his original version would have been well before brewing a bag.
Yeah.
His original brew, how to brew.
Yeah. I think this is. So it's kind of it's come up with a theory, but it's not exactly.
It's not giving you a source, is it?
It sort of vaguely says that Palmer's How to Brew and fault guidelines confirm this. Yeah. So it's not going to be persuaded, but it's not taking us to chapter and verse, is it?
I think that the top bit where it's saying it's a chemical reaction, not a physical one,
Yeah.
possibly. But
Yeah.
I
I don't
had
know.
I used AI to compare two XML files where I could see a difference between the two files, and I wanted it to summarize all the differences. And it went on for ages about all these other differences. And I was thinking, that's not true because I can see those two bits and they aren't different. I challenged it and it said, "You're right to challenge me. I was wrong."
So
And then
weirdly, yeah.
it said I was working on truncated versions of the two XML files because of my file size limit. But it hadn't put that in the original answer. It just said, here's the answer. This is what it is.
So what I use it mostly for at work is not generating content, but doing the sort of thing that you were doing. Is kind of just say, look at this document and highlight any errors or inconsistencies. And about half of the errors and inconsistencies it comes out with, it's just hallucinated. But you can look at the document and see straight away that it's misread it or it's making it up. But occasionally it spots things that you would never have been able to spot by eye at all. It's reading a 100-page document and it says, well, on page 2, you said this. And on page 98, you called it something slightly different. And you go, oh, okay, that's fine. So long as you can detect almost immediately whether it's right or wrong, that's fine. But if you can't, in particular, if you have to kind of go into a brew and then you find out kind of 3 months later that it was wrong, that's no good, is it?
Yeah.
Right. Right, I'll just sort of wrap up the slides, and maybe because Peter, I'm conscious that you've got a presentation too. Yeah, so let's just go back to so it is unreliable, but on the other hand, it has helped, I think, to some degree, and it's sort of introduced me to things that there's a certain amount of, if you were just searching for things, you would miss things that you don't know about. So it's given me some quite useful advice about making candy sugar, and it had a thing about dip hopping, which I couldn't really see the point of, but I tried it anyway, and it didn't really seem to make any difference. But it just kind of introduces you to new ideas. Oh yeah, and this is Gemini's own summary of the presentation, which is all sort of AI speak, really. But it likes my motto at the beginning: judge LLMs by results, not words, and reliability is key. Yeah, so interesting. It hasn't turned me into a world-class brewer, but I mean that's the great thing about brewing. There's no shortcuts, are there? You just have to. It's all about know-how and experience.
Excellent. And precision.
And precision. I must say I'm more of a kind of Jamie Oliver type brewer than a Delia Smith, but I do appreciate that precision is important.
I think that's a nice segue into my presentation, actually, about precision.
Good. I'll stop sharing.
And I will start sharing. Okay, so hang on, why is it frozen? There we go. My presentation is a cautionary tale about using LLMs, which should nicely follow on from James's talk. I've been using ice spindles for many years to monitor my fermentation. That's a picture of my very first one in 2017. And I got to the stage where I needed to upgrade, and I upgraded to using GravityMon. And GravityMon is a... Hang on, let's just put everybody in the right place on the right screen. And using GravityMon, I needed to recalibrate my eye spindles. Now, the way that I've done this in the past, you go through and you do your various sugar solutions, you dilute, you do various calculations, and you fill in a spreadsheet, and you end up with a polynomial. So I asked myself, was there a better way? So what I did was I wrote a prompt, a quite extensive prompt that I put into, and there's a lot of wordy slides coming up, but just treat them as reference if you ever want to look at the PDF in the future. I'm just going to skim through the gist of these. So I asked both ChatGPT and Gemini what the best practice would be for creating a polynomial. I gave it details of the environment that it had to deal with, and I gave it some sample data from a previous batch that I'd brewed and took the data from Brewfather. So I got two different answers between ChatGPT. I got all that stuff that you can see on the left, and Gemini went in a different mode. Now I use the free version of Gemini, and I use the Pro mode. I found the fast mode is more unreliable than not. It's probably not worth having. So I got a lot of theory from ChatGPT, and I got a lot of specifics, and it specifically recommended a linear formula. So I asked some more questions. So I asked ChatGPT, and it recommended, not an I, because it's not an I, it's artificial, as in man-made. It recommended a fourth order polynomial fitted to a PCHIP spline smooth data. And I thought, oh, that's impressive. Gemini continued on, you've not really got your polynomial sorted out yet. So, you know, two different approaches between the two of them. ChatGPT then jumped into a whole lot of detail about what I should set up in GravityMon. Gemini still plodding on, saying, you've got these points that you've got as truth coming from your hydrometer readings, and this should be good for what you need. So ChatGPT generated this this graph. I thought, oh yeah, that looks okay. Looks like some of the other ones I've seen. And then I put some more data in, and it, as you see, it falls off a cliff. So I then thought, well, I better check with Gemini what this monotonic cubic spline is. So it said, you can't use it, likely no. So I thought, well, fine. Do not use that third order polynomial. Dreadfully inaccurate. I said, all right, okay. So I thought, right, no more ChatGPT, just waffling along about other things. Overkill for the application, says Gemini. So then I needed to reset in GravityMon the settings that I had, and I asked it about the questions that ChatGPT had raised about accuracy, etc. And I validated this because I actually read the words on the website of the manual, in effect, about what you should do to set it, and it had drawn from that actual site this information. So I thought, well, that's okay, that validates that, and continued with those. And then I decided something that I hadn't been doing with GravityMon, and that was getting it to adjust at source the gravity based on temperature. I thought that was a better approach than not. So now I've got a new baseline, and I've put the formula in, and I added both eye spindles, both my blue and white eye spindle, to batch 444, best bidder. Now I know this is going to be a little bit confusing because it's got everything happening on here, but you've got two lines here. You've got, this is the pressure line, don't worry about that one, but this is the gravity drop lines, and you can see that the bluey grey line is the blue one, and the red one is the white eye spindle, and they're sort of tracking together. Now what you can do in Brewfather is export a JSON. So you click the button up the top here, and you get the Brewfather readings. And I got Gemini to analyze it. I told it that here were my my manual readings, what offsets I'd put in, and got it to review what's happening. Now, it was very keen that I stop using offsets and actually change the formula. So my next batch, I updated with new formulas, And as you can see now, they're both tracking very close together. So I thought, all right, we're getting there now. And the Christmas beer, which was proper job, drank very well. Not as strong as real proper job, but you need a quaffler in the heat. So I got it to analyze the next JSON, and it's a bit like a cheerleader. It's always extremely positive about everything. And I'm not using an agent or anything. I'm just typing in specific prompts. So it's saying it's performed pretty well. So, you know, it's okay. It just needs a bit of a tweak. So we're now on the perfection formulas. Okay. Into the next batch. With these new formulas, your devices are now calibrated to fermentation conditions, which is superior to water calibration. Now, yeah, that seems reasonable. With this laboratory precision, you likely won't need to touch these settings again for a long time. So we shall see. So I put this into the next batch. Downloaded the, as you can see, they were a bit messy when they came out of the fermenter. Got it to analyze the batch. It got a bit confused about the increase in original gravity and said, well, I now need a golden formula. You can now leave them as your permanent settings. Oh, okay. So I put in the next batch, which was a 1975 Young's Bitter that I'd recreated. And I used two different formulas. I used the blue, stayed on the same formula, and a different formula in the white to see what would happen. It projected what should happen, and what we ended up with was the white one, the universal approach, was better than the specifics. However, what was suggested was tweak the new universal formula, version 2, to deal with this final issue. Another best bidder. However, the final reading in the JSON, because it just looks at the entire JSON file, I cold crashed it down, and it gave this reasonably plausible argument that it was all to do with the software, but we basically can ignore it. The formula, do not touch it. So if I was to summarize the process, the ice spindles are floating in the wort. It's transmitting data every 15 minutes. That gets logged into Brewfather. You do your own manual temperature corrected OG, FG with your hydrometer. Gemini analyzes the JSON files, has a look at what's come out, and then customize the formula. You update the formula and you go again. So this started in, when did I start this? November last year. And I just continuously did the same exercise batch after batch. So 5 iterations. I think I'm now getting a more accurate gravity estimation without having to do anything with the sugary water. But, and there's always a but, I put in a stout at OG 1061. and the calculation was way out. So there's a couple of important things to recognize here, that the AI, it only does name, rank, and serial number. It only answers the questions that it is asked. It takes the context from the data, and the data that I presented at the beginning was for a linear formula that it decided was a linear formula, and that worked quite well, it has to be said. But as soon as you get to a higher gravity, you need a degree 2 quadratic polynomial, which had been vaguely intimated at the very beginning, but not explicitly stated as a problem. So I updated the blue ice spindle, and the batch that I put it in, an oat malt stout, also at 1060, tracked okay for both ice spindles. So my takeaway points, asking the right questions and framing the questions is very important. You cannot park your brain and your expertise at the door and let it do stuff. You have to be quite persistent, and you do need to validate what it's saying. It's a very interesting exercise. I have ended up with ice spindles that are well calibrated and seem to be working very well. But at the bottom of the Gemini web browser page, Gemini is an AI and can make mistakes. And if you believe what it's telling you without query, you will make mistakes as well. So there's a couple of other things that I think you could use it for by extracting the JSONs. It must be said that Brewfather now has an expensive option to actually use their incorporated AI, which I'm not prepared to pay for, because I don't think it, for me at least, it doesn't add any value. But being able to extract the JSON and then provide doing an analysis on that JSON, I think is quite a valid approach. So I'd be interested on prediction of the final gravity after you've had the fermentation going for, say, 48 hours. And I'm also interested in what residual carbonation might be in the beer, which I think it should be able to calculate. But they're things for future development. So I use GravityMon, I use Brewfather and iSpindle and Gemini Pro, and happy to take some questions.
Thanks, Peter. That's really interesting, because it's kind of pushing. I was kind of assuming that Gemini was just basically no good at maths at all, but it looks like you've kind of got it to produce some quite useful results, at least in some contexts. So, maybe that is worth looking at further.
I've used it quite a bit for programming ESP32s, and that's using Arduino and various other things. It's quite good at code. I mentioned the Young's Bitter on my Triton Books YouTube channel. I did a video there that details how I used AI. It created a Python file that enabled me to analyze historical brewing records. I did a lot of work on that to be able to get it to do what I wanted it to do, and I had to validate everything that it told me. But the actual program creation in a Python file, I could never have done that. It's just well beyond my programming capability. And by knowing what you want and having a level of understanding of the brewing process, and having converted, hundreds of historical brewing records, I was able to make sure it was doing what I wanted it to do. And that actually takes an input from a JSON. These things are 10 years ago, if somebody had asked me what a JSON file, I wouldn't have had a clue. The AI, Gemini and ChatGPT seem to like these formats for analysis. And one of the things I'm not sure that you covered in your chat was you can actually you can ask the LLM to frame your prompt. So you ask it for the prompt that it needs to be able to give you what you want. And then you refine that prompt, and it will work. It will gradually refine. Some of the other weird things that I've seen is it forgets things. And that's where Steve's gem approach and using what's it called now? The Gemini LM, where you can put, as a research tool, you put all your data in and it will only access that data. So if you've got a brewing resource well beyond Palmer and the BJCP, you can put those sources in. There's a lot of the historical textbooks are out of copyright and accessible online, so they're accessible to the bot. You're then getting a snapshot, say, of mid-20th century brewing techniques, which I find quite interesting. Not everybody does, but I do. Yeah, it opens opportunities, but you can't it. If you were somebody that was just going to rely on AI to generate something for you without you being mindful of the way it works, then I'm sorry, you're not going to get good results with the current iteration of intelligence. But
yeah,
so
absolutely agree.
Yeah. So interesting exercise. So I would possibly disagree with James on his opening comment about the data analysis capability, but again, your mileage may vary.
Yeah. So the coding point is interesting, because the next thing I was looking at was trying to code a little web app that would use the API from the Kegland. I'm not quite sure what they call it, but if you use the kind of Kegland series of devices, they all post data in a certain format, and you can access their website, but it's absolutely horrible. The login takes about a couple of minutes or so. So I started asking Gemini to suggest how I could kind of code a web app myself, and it said, "Look, don't bother. Just subscribe to Brewfather. That's got the integration of all the Kegland products into it. Why bother to reinvent the wheel?" And I kind of thought, okay, got a subscription for Brewfather and saved myself a lot of bother. But yeah, there is scope for doing some coding there as well, I think.
Yeah, I do not like proprietary solutions. All of my All of my brewery is customized, shall we say. And yeah, I feed everything into Brewfather, and I use that as my repository of data.
Hmm.
So the ice spindles go in there, the pressure from brew piles. Yeah, it's
Oh. So Peter, you mentioned the Brewfather kind of super premium AI mode, which I haven't tried. But moving over um, into Brewfather, what I found was that it was very picky about how you. So if you want to create an inventory of brewing ingredients, um, you have to pick everything from a drop-down list. It's tremendously labor intensive to put that in. Whereas just with an ordinary LLM, you can just give it a spreadsheet in whatever format you've decided is suitable, and it seems to pretty much understand what you've got. So it does save a lot of kind of deciding what on the drop-down list best suits your inventory. So I think there's a general point there, which is that, and I found this at work as well, that the foundation LLMs normally are better than kind of customized AI tools at doing a particular job, because all the customized AI tool does is just kind of add a very expensive wrapper on top of the same foundation model. So what I've tended to do is just ignore all of that and just use Gemini or Claude or whatever directly.
Yeah. It depends how you're. It depends where you're starting from. I think. The way I use Brewfather is to. I have a template. So I have a standard recipe that's got
Hmm.
all my settings in for a nominal 1040 beer.
Hmm.
It's got all the adjuncts that I need, like Whirlflock and all that
Hmm.
stuff. And I then copy that base one into what I want, and then just pop in the ingredients into the particular beer that I'm creating. Uh, so I don't really bother too much about having to select ingredients, but as I say, people come at these things from different perspectives.
I think you're talking about it's the entering all the stuff into the inventory to start with is a pain, isn't it, in Brewfather if you're starting from scratch.
But if because he has another thing that I've learned that I didn't know 10 years ago is an API. Because he's got a published API, I actually use the API to pull information from my batch and display it on a small screen on an ESP32 device. Other people have developed the ability, and this may be something that AI could do quite easily, is actually access the API, pull the data out of the database, and just pop that straight into where you wanted to use it. That to me seems, providing you define the problem, I'm sure the AI would come up with a method of interrogating the API and displaying it on a browser screen. I wouldn't see that as an insurmountable problem. What AI does, it makes things that were really hard easy in certain respects. But I have the hallucination thing. It comes up as ever so positive. As I went through the ice spindle exercise, each time it was going to be, yes, this is it. It's going to be, this is great, wonderful. And then you find there's just this other little thing that needs adjusting.
So
And then
this is
it's,
interesting.
yes, it's great, and on to the next one.
So you're getting all this positivity, and yet Jim, the home brewer, spends the whole time slagging me off. What am I doing wrong?
You've not defined the personality correctly. I'm just
Or
using
maybe I have. I
ordinary.
don't know.
Is it a reflection? This is the.
Yes. It's how I treat it. I spend the whole time arguing with it, and it just responds in kind. It knows I want an argument, so it's actually giving me what I want.
Touch of the Monty Pythons, eh?
Yes, absolutely.
Did you tell it to be irascible?
Not directly. You can see from the prompt, I told it to be polite, but obviously my behavior.
I think you just need to get it to channel John Cleese to get the ultimate faulty experience.
The contradiction bot. Yeah, that would be good.
So I don't know how you found it, James. I just find it. I have a lot of time because I'm retired, and I'm quite happy that I don't pay for the paid version. What I tend to do is I'll put a question in and I'll use up my allotted time, and then I'll think about the response and how I'm going to either reframe or recast the question. And when my time comes around again, I've actually thought up of a better question or a variation on a theme. So I don't find that a problem in the way I work with it.
I don't think it's going to put brewers out of business anytime soon, or even amateur brewers.
No, because it doesn't have the sensory capability. As you put in your it put in its summary slide, not you anymore. It.
No.
Yeah. But it is fun. Well, I think it's fun. I mean, it's. I've used the in my most recent book, and I'm not trying to plug a book. I hadn't used AI before, and I needed some generic labels because I didn't actually have any real labels for the era. So I wanted a New York label, and I wanted, as it was an unknown brewery in New York, I wanted something that was, very typically New York. So I thought Brooklyn Bridge, because the brewery was in Brooklyn, and I gave it all these prompts. And I really fought to try and get a theme so that all the labels looked the same. And in the end, I couldn't get, it's much like your tap handle thing. I couldn't get it to do it. So what I did, I got it close, and then I put it into GIMP, which is a free image editor, and then I painted out the AI introduced rubbish, and every image comes up with some embellishment that you didn't want against what you had in your mind, and I just painted them out, and yeah, that was good.
I'd be interested to hear if anyone has had kind of more success with labels, because we'd see some really good labels on bottle swaps coming out of labs. So I don't know, maybe people are really good graphic designers and have done all of it themselves. I'd be interested to know how people have done it.
I think it's got better over the last year or two. Originally, when he did a beer label, it just had words that didn't make sense on it and weirdness. Whereas now it seems to be better at words. That's ChatGPT I usually use for that. I find ChatGPT seems to be a bit better than Copilot, which is the other one I use in terms of image generation.
Yeah, or it's partly a question of, Peter, as you were saying, you kind of use the image generation to just create the image and just make sure that there are blank spaces that you can then type in the text. So for creating bottle labels where you have a kind of list of ingredients on the side, and maybe a QR code to the recipe and that kind of thing, I tend to just use the AI to produce the basic image, and then everything else you just fill in yourself, because I've spent so much time kind of getting it to try and correct its mistakes on the text, and it just can't do it at all.
The assistant that Steve has made in Gem is quite interesting. Would you like to see that one working? Because I can probably put it up on the screen.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, let me just try.
I think pretty much all my labels, I've used it to generate an image and then put text on top.
Yeah.
So I use it. There's a thing called Maestro that you get when you buy labels off of, I don't know, labels.co.uk. And it's a bit, you put in the template for the sticky labels you've got for, and it all, then you can put in images and text on top. So I've tended to do that rather than try and create the entire label.
And actually, with the Bishop tap handle problem, what I ended up doing was just creating an image using Gemini or whatever that was sort of right, and then just using image editing software to fit this image into this particular shape, and that was a lot easier.
Come on.
Are other people using it much for anything? Recipes or brewing advice or?
I've not, but I've not, I never thought about the giving it a personality thing that James has done there. I've always just asked a question and I've always found that the answer's quite dumb. So then I thought, well, I knew that. So I think that the saying, you know, reference this, reference that, I think is definitely something I'm going to try.
Hopefully you can see the screen that's got Ask the Brewer. So this isn't mine. This is Steve's. Give us a question. I asked it to explain party garling, so it's something I have some knowledge of. It was close, but it was no cigar.
What about the bag squeezing question?
Right. God, there we go. What time is it? Oh, it's 5:30. Wonderful. We'll go pro and submit. You note down the bottom, it's got the guided learning thing on, which is a mode that you can put in. Steve shared with me how he defined this is a Gemini gem, how he defined it, because I was curious, because I hadn't come across this idea of an intelligent, inverted commas, assistant before, so I was keen to see what it did. Oh, it's obviously having a think.
It's quite early in the morning, though, isn't it? So it's probably a bit tired.
Oh, well, the electrons are having to go uphill and, oh, here we go.
Going to say it's probably using huge amounts of server power, drying up some riverbeds in Texas.
No, it's probably dim the lights in in a country somewhere.
It's obviously the question. It's obviously a really difficult question.
Yes. Ooh. Okay. Let's see. I'll just scroll this slowly. Yeah. To guide our discussion, which of these areas would you like to dive into?
Oh my God.
Well, I think it's
Shall
two,
we go
isn't
into
it?
Got to be number two.
Number two,
Number two,
Yeah.
right. You see where it's actually got the sources here? That's always useful. Because some of the stuff that these models have been trained on is dubious, to say the least. So at least within this one, Steve has defined the sources that this can use. Let's tackle the tannin bogeyman. Oh, good.
Well, you got a diagram.
Yes, okay, we know about polyphenols, but what about squeezing the bag? Unless you have superhuman strength. So what we got here is tannin extraction is a matter of was that implied in that other response?
Yeah,
it was. Yeah. They agree, but it's the same LLM.
Yeah. But may have been trained on a different set of data.
It's interesting how it says generally safe rather than the other version, which sort of seemed to be positive about it, though.
Yeah, well, that's the personality.
Yeah.
I think it looks like it's going to go into that. I guess the it's probably squeezing is safe if you haven't done other things that have already put the tannins into solution, and if you squeeze it, then you're going to get more of them out.
Yeah, so it mentioned that the other one, pH and their temperature, didn't it? Which we sort of know that already, yeah. That if the pH is wrong and the temperature's wrong, you're going to get tannins, but yeah.
So this tea bag analogy is really interesting because the philosophy about tea bags is you shouldn't squeeze them because you do get tannin, but obviously that's tea rather than malt. So
yeah, but that's a tea bag is at a higher temperature, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. Which is possibly when they talk about brewing tea that you shouldn't necessarily use 100 degree. Perhaps you're extracting more tannins at 100 degrees than, say, a lower temperature.
Well, it's all down to taste, isn't it? Because if you were brewing a stout, a bit more tannins in there is going to be neither here nor there because the roast flavors are going to be dominant anyway. If you were doing a delicate light lager, it might be more evident. Might be horses for courses, really. Anyway, so it's interesting. Where was the? So let's go back up here to the sources. Where did it get its information from? It got it from Palmer. How to brew, but that's the online Palmer, the same one as James has got. I would suspect that Palmer is. What version is his book on now? 5, 4?
I didn't think the original one had brew in a bag.
I don't think it did. I could look on my shelf, but this is what's called having a library.
Yeah, I've got it here. there's no brew in a bag section in this book. It's obviously not referring to that at all. It's just referring to. It looks like it's referring to water chemistry.
Mm.
Yeah, I think Anthony's you stuck a thing from a different one, haven't you? In that says about the same thing. That if your
Yeah.
mash
Okay.
pH is okay and you're not going above 77, then you're fine squeezing. But if you're outside of those parameters, then squeezing will make the tannin extraction worse.
So
Okay.
actually, this illustrates another problem with LLMs and references, and this is a big problem in the legal profession, that you can get the LLM to quote chapter and verse from a particular reference, but if you actually read that reference, you wouldn't find any basis for it at all. So what may be happening is the LLM is saying, oh yeah, Palmer says this, but you actually go to Palmer and it doesn't say anything of the sort.
Yes, which is why checking the sources is sources.
I mean, those page references are definitely not correct for this version.
No, I've got the 2017 version.
I think the free version is about 2006 or so. That's the one I used.
It doesn't.
I mean, is this one of the issues of restricting what it's referencing? Is they're designed to reference hundreds of sources, and then when you just give it one and start asking it questions that are outside the scope of the source, it basically then starts, disappearing up its own.
Could you say for this question, don't just look at the sources, but use whatever you can find on the internet?
Well, I think what I often do in other spheres would be to tell it how to use the knowledge compared to searching for stuff on this. So almost sort of what priority or what attention, or give it the context about the knowledge that you've uploaded. I suppose one of the things that's challenging here is it's trying to summarize something on what's a kind of contentious topic in brewing, where every few years someone might be publishing something different. And so it very much will depend on like what's the content out there on the internet, on a point that may not be completely settled.
So I think, Peter, you're referring to, so there's an alternative to using the ordinary Gemini chat, which is Notebook LLM, which is another kind of Google thing. And I think with Notebook LLM, it will only answer based on the documents that you provide. So effectively, it's a kind of search agent through the documents you provide. But with kind of general Gemini chat, it's not clear whether, clearly it doesn't restrict itself to the knowledge base that you provide. It kind of uses the other material it's been trained on, but it's not clear whether the material you provide overrides everything else, or whether it just kind of gives it some weighting, but still looks at everything else and balances that out. The balance between the two is not clear.
Yeah. So on some of the models, you can switch on and off whether it will use internet search. But I suppose that's my sort of suggestion about. Therefore, in the instructions, if you have if you want to kind of give it some context on how much to trust knowledge that you've uploaded, or sort of explain what each document is. So, for example, on that how to brew one, you could say, this is a document from, freely available on the internet, but it's from 2006. So in some cases, more modern knowledge might supersede what John Palmer thought at the time.
So this is Notebook LM. You get to it from. I've only fiddled with this a little bit. I haven't done as much as Steve has done with this, and what it's touted as, looking at some of the YouTube videos, all these options here is once that you've created whatever it is that you've got in your notebook that has come from a whole lot of research sources, then you can make mind maps and do all sorts of things. A lot of these things are just, in my view, window dressing. They're not actually productivity tools or anything particularly useful. They just look pretty. Mind maps, as I understand them, for example, is something for you to conceptualize something, not just end up with a pretty graphic of a mind map. But then that might be just me. Well, it's trundling along. Perhaps by the time you've all expired, it'll have come up with a result. Oh, it's getting close to getting a coffee time, I think. Oh, step 2 of 5. So, yeah.
I might go and pour myself another beer, as it's not.
I think that's a
not
good
breakfast
idea.
o'clock here.
Right. Well, I think a beer break is and a comfort stop, as we're 2 hours in or something. I'll just leave that running and it'll turn up when it turns up. I'll go and hit the coffee machine. Oh, we're on 3 or 5. Talk amongst yourselves.
Well, let's hope the answer's amazing.
Oh,
Oh.
deep joy.
Oh, well, better import this then. Oh, that's a Reddit thing, isn't it? That's a brew your own, is it? The AHA website. Our US colleagues, from my experience, were and perhaps still are very skeptical of brew in a bag, no chill, and other things that, at least in Australia, are taken for granted. Anyway,
so with squeezing the bag, is the problem that you're forcing very small particles of grain out of the bag, which then end up in the boil and therefore get tannin extracted at that stage, or is that completely wrong?
well, we've got this answer. Increase efficiency, because you can sparge a bag.
Which is what I would do to keep the wort clear rather than squeezing all the little particles out.
Typically, a bag grist can be milled finer than an ordinary mash,
Hmm.
because you don't have necessarily to deal with drainage, perhaps. I know sparge now. I can't be bothered with all this sort of nonsense. So it's just simpler just to put a bit more grain in and get what you want. But yeah, bag squeezing is temperature and pH more critical. Squeezing may be riskier with dark roasted malts. Now we've got. Do we want to try this question here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Or yeah.
We're going down
So
a rabbit hole here, aren't we?
Yes.
Well,
We're not going to get to any. There's not going to be any definitive answers.
No, there never is.
We'll be here in 5 hours' time.
But we'll be more informed.
I know, but I mean, isn't this one of the kind of perennial brewing problems, that it depends on so many factors? You know, you can kind of say in this particular set of circumstances, it doesn't make any difference. And then someone else kind of says, oh, actually, it does make a difference in these particular circumstances. But the number of different parameters that can change is huge. So it's really difficult to get a sort of consistent answer.
Well, it pointed out somewhere that the tannins are in the husks, aren't they? So if you're crushing and possibly roasting, you're going to change possibly how that's coming out in the sparge. So perhaps if you've got a finer crush and so on, perhaps forcing more of those smaller particles out does release.
Well, this one looks reasonably authoritative. I would trust Palmer, I think, over a lot of other sources. And he's written this article for BYO in 2016. I don't know whether that'll launch. Yeah, okay, let's try that. So it's something that's. Oh no, you got to be behind. It's behind a paywall. Never mind. But yeah, it's managed to get behind the paywall. That was good. That was a good trick. Good trick.
James, you know, have you tried, once it's given you a recipe, have you tried to see whether if you gave it your logon details for Brewfather, it could actually create the recipe in Brewfather?
Oh no, that's a thought. No, I've got it to export the recipe in Beer XML, and that sort of works. Although you have to give it a couple of attempts, because previously I was using Brewer's Friend, and it really didn't. It couldn't work with the Brewer's Friend version of Beer XML.
I found with the XML file, it's an older format, and it's missing stuff. So if you import into Brewfather with an XML, it tends to be incomplete. If you're exporting from Brewfather, the JSON is much more complete, but it's a Brewfather format rather than an XML format. Mm-hmm. So you lose bits with the XML.
Yeah. To be honest, I've ended up just entering the recipe manually, because by the time you've worked out all the conversion problems, you might as well have just done that.
Yeah, I was just thinking whether you could use it to work like a bot, where it can, you know, it can see the screen and enter things directly.
Give it your login details.
Yeah.
It probably already knows.
Yes, yeah. I'm sure it does. Yeah, particularly with Gemini, where it's all part of the kind of Google sphere, and it knows all about your habits anyway. So it's probably putting all of that in as well.
Yes.
Should we try an infographic? Just for the.
Yeah.
Why not? I'm pretty sure you can deselect any suspect sources to refine the. I find Brulosophy is interesting, but I don't necessarily agree with a lot of their conclusions. But some of the things they try are just conceptually interesting. But yeah. Oh well, I'm probably going to run out of whatever free allocation I get soon. So anyway,
I think you get half the forest.
What the Amazon?
Yes.
3 oak trees and a sycamore.
Oh, not old growth. Oh dear.
I mean, you could always set up your own local LLM, but you need to shell out about $5,000 on hardware before you get anything serious for that.
I think you can restrict it to. My son works in IT. I think he said some people create virtual machines so that you keep whatever the AI is doing separate from your stuff in a virtual machine, which keeps it away, so it can do what it likes within that, and you give it more autonomy in that sort of space.
Mm-hmm.
Which
you keep it in its own little prison, then.
Yeah, bit harsh, but yeah. But as it's in it doesn't know. It's already. Oh, where do I get that? Where's that come from?
Did we watch the Grayson Perry, the 2 episodes he did on AI? It's very interesting. And there's one, what's the face, Hannah Fry, that's done a series as well.
Oh,
look at that!
Nice.
Looks good. It might be full of shit though.
That's the right level of skepticism that we need to apply to this. Given that this whole thing's going to be published on the internet at some stage, I think if there's one message any of the viewers in the future take out of this, is skepticism is a must. Okay, so it at a cursory look, it's taken the words and put a few pictures in.
Very nice though.
Yeah. Shall I save that and put that in the chat? Do you like that one?
Yeah, that's good. It's sort of missing Palmer's point that a bit of squeezing is okay. I mean, I know it's sort of, a little bit, not too much, but the message seems to be squeeze a little bit, but not too much.
And not your dark malt.
And not your dark malts, yeah.
Yeah, and you do need to put all of what you've just said in the context of brewing.
Yes, that's true.
Right, let me just stop sharing so I can do a few things. Where are we?
I'm just pinging your backup.
Yeah. Where are we? Where's the thing for sharing?
I hadn't realized you could create these much more focused AI agents using Gem. I've never done anything like that. Like some other folk, I've just used general, chat to answer questions about, malts or hops or yeasts, and for that kind of stuff. Actually, I found it quite useful for recipes. I mean, again, it's like chatting with an overexcited friend who's read too many books and not worried too much about what they've read. But so if you sort of edit it yourself a little bit, actually, I think I found it quite useful with recipes, and even if it's just spurred on my own thinking about, oh, actually, I could go in that direction. Then I've gone down a road myself, that's been inspired by, but not prescribed by, chat or whatever. But I find it quite useful with recipe iterations.
I find it. I think there's two things that I've found useful. One, I suppose, is just during the process of brewing, if I think I've done something stupid or need a quick fix of something, it's quite a good in the moment either source of reassurance or source of ideas for what you can then do in 5 minutes. And also, I think it was interesting seeing that flashcards option on there on the notebook, because when Ken and Rob and Steve and James and I did the written exam last year, I created quite a lot of flashcards for the BJCP exam, and had some of them I used AI for and had sort of mixed experiences with it. But obviously that was almost a year ago. Probably if I tried to do the same thing now, they would be much better quality as well. But getting it to sort of summarize in a consistent way to answer the questions on the written exam about different styles, for example. So how do you kind of get the most across in the least amount of words? And the other thing was actually on those questions, because you've got a list of 10 that you're going to get asked on techniques and style, and it's all about what you can get across in the time, sort of helping me to make my answers shorter without losing meaning. That makes sense. So if anyone's doing that exam in the future, it's useful.
It doesn't do a bad job at summarizing, and it's not too bad at wordy things, which I guess is what it was originally geared up to do.
Excellent. I'm going to drop off, but that was really interesting. I might catch up with you, James, and inquire a bit more about how you give it the personality, but without it being rude to me. I think.
if you can work that out, then please tell me. So one thing I was going to do actually is you can share these particular gems and the little interactive quiz and that kind of thing. But when I was preparing the slides, that sharing functionality was broken in some way. So when that comes back up, I'll send you some links.
Yeah, that'd be really good. I've used your prompt as well for the multi-guess BJCP, and it worked really well. I just did it. I banged through loads of questions on that, and then immediately logged on, did the exam, all in one sort of 2-hour session, and flew through.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate brain hammering.
Yeah, I was annoyed that I did the pay for 3 option, thinking I was going to fail.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Maybe you pay for 3, they just let you pass first time anyway.
Maybe.
Cheaper for them.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna go away. But thank you very much. It was really, really interesting.
Me too. Me
Speak
too.
to
Thanks,
later,
everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you both. That was really interesting.
Thanks.